the bog of eternal stench.
Hello friends, my name is Stevie Cade and welcome to Film Trigger. So, I have to admit something. There's a movie that went under my radar as a kid, and my friend Bonnie Humble, hi Bonnie, pretty much came over and made me watch this movie. But before we dive into all that, if you could, hit that thumbs up button, that subscribe button, and the little bell ding thing so you get notified every time I upload a new video. That's how this channel grows. You, me, buttons, click them. Now without further ado, let's dive into my first watch movie review of Labyrinth.
The world of Labyrinth.
As I said, I'd never seen this before. I've never really had much interest in it. It looks a little outdated to me at first. Like, this is before I went into the movie. But with that said, let's dive into what I do like about this movie. There's a good amount of things to like about this movie. I was floored with how much I did enjoy it. And first thing out of the gate, I'm just gonna say this movie was very funny, super funny. I literally did not expect myself to laugh as much as I did. And it has some pretty good highbrow jokes, also some childish humor, if you will. If you're gonna make a fart joke, you might as well go all the way, right?
And there is not anything like it. It's like...
Oh, it doesn't matter what it's like. It's a bog of eternal stench.
Set designs. The grand scale of this entire set is absolutely amazing. Like, I feel really immersed in this world. It reminds me of almost like Wizard of Oz, but like bigger. It's probably one of the best practical sets in like a fantasy type of movie that I've ever seen. And this has a lot to do with the panoramic drop cloth that they had painted in the background. It's one of the biggest ones ever made for a movie. Along with all the details that Jim Henson Studios put into making this film. It was well thought out, well planned, and it comes across really good on screen. And they have this very creative use of visual storytelling that I really enjoyed. One of the biggest examples of this, when you see Jareth's face as like it's like a rock, and then it changes perspective, and you see that it's multiple rocks to create this one image. Now, what I mean by storytelling is that that face appears multiple times in this movie. Whether you recognize it or not, it's a visual cue to let your mind know that, hey, Jareth is always watching, he's always around, this is his world. Puppet designs and their functions. There's, needless to say, Jim Henson is the puppet master. I mean, that's all Jim Henson Studios does. That's their main thing. That's what they're most popular for. They are the Lucasfilms of puppetry. And that's because of the details that go into these these creatures, these goblins and these other weird things that are in there. They look familiar in a certain way, but completely unfamiliar in the other ways. It gives this kind of dream world sort of feel about it, which is what I really do like about movies like this. Even though you're looking at puppets, you want that puppet to succeed. You want that puppet to have its redemption. That's a pretty powerful thing. And another creative use of practical effects, specifically talking about the helping hands. What a super creative way to use these hands to create their own sort of puppet faces. Again, it just shows you that this fantasy world is alive. You're not going to expect what's around the corner. Rocks are talking to you. Trees are throwing apples. Wait, that's a different movie. You get my point. Another thing I really enjoyed about this movie was the junkyard scene. I mean, the visual representation of addiction to material items is just very present. When you're not able to let go of things, how they collect, weigh you down, and bog you down. That's some deep shit, dude. That's a life lesson right there. But actually look to the beauty in life itself and not these materialistic items that do nothing but weigh you down. I thought that was a beautiful scene and a great representation of mental health.
This is not junk. Yes, it is. Toby!
Another thing I really enjoyed about this movie was the character Sarah's growth. The way she starts out as this kind of selfish, bratty little kid. By the end of the movie, we get this more mature, more humble young adult. It's a coming-of-age movie, really. I thought her journey was very well earned, but also at the same time, I would have liked some more setup from Sarah, but we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. The overall story being told here, I think is pretty okay, but the overall story that I want to talk about is the Goblin King. The Goblin King and his ultimate collection of children. Is that what's going on here? Is he collecting kids? Sarah doesn't get to Toby within 13 hours. Toby will turn into a goblin in this world full of goblins. So are all goblins children at one point in time? Creepy. And does that have something to do with Jareth's obsession with Sarah? And is that supposed to be romantic? Because if so, You know, personally, I don't want to think they set that up to be a romantic thing. I really do not want to consider a 14-year-old Sarah being groomed by a 40-year-old Jareth and his super bulgy pants while he's playing with his crystal balls. In my headcanon, Jareth is actually infatuated with Sarah's youth and her purity. It's pretty much everything that he's not. He's created this world where makes beautiful things like children and turns them into ugly monsters. He surrounds himself in this sort of desolate but dark world. It's a representation of himself, an extension of himself, if you will. In this world, he is the king because he's the one that doesn't look like a monster, but he actually is, on the inside, real deep. And in this world full of children turned to goblins, it seems that Sarah is ungoblinable. Is that a word? It is today. And every hurdle she jumps over, he becomes more infatuated with her purity. I'm going to use that word a lot. Purity. That's Sarah. Sarah, purity. Same thing. So my main point being, it's an obsession of her youthfulness, of her purity, of her kindness, and not a romantic story. At least in my here. At least that's how I'm going to look at it when I watch this movie, because otherwise it's very creepy. But we will touch on that creepy factor also a little later. But with this weird relationship between Jareth and Sarah, I think there's some missing pieces. Something that doesn't quite add up. That's what's going to lead me to what I'm on the fence about when it comes to this film. I think there's a deeper story to be told here. Who is Jareth IRL? That means in real life. I'm learning new things. There is a photo of David Bowie on Sarah's mirror. Why is that photo there? He's with, I believe it's supposed to be Sarah's mom, which I guess he is, a stepdad sort of figure in that world. I only know that doing some research for this movie because the movie didn't tell me that. And if they did, I missed it, but I don't remember that being a thing. But yes, that's supposed to be Sarah's stepdad, whose name is Jeremy. Jeremy, Jareth. See a bridge connecting things here? So I think the better question is, why is Sarah projecting her stepdad's image onto this Goblin King and her weird-ass world that she has created? But the fact she did project her stepdad as the Goblin King is a very psychological and Freudian level of really dealing with something either traumatic or something deep down that you really need to connect with. And if you add that icky possible sensual relationship side of that, that goes into a deeper and darker psychological state that I don't know if this movie intended on. There's a lot to unpack there. I'm only taking little hints that I saw in the movie, and I'm putting these pieces together because they were given to me in no context. Why is there a photo of Jareth with Sarah's mom? I don't know, but once I dive deeper into it, it gets kind of weird. As I stated before, the MacGuffin of having to chase Toby down through the maze that is the Labyrinth, I find it weak, mainly because I don't give a shit about Toby. I didn't feel fear for him. I wasn't concerned about him, mainly because I didn't have any context of the character. I knew nothing about him. Again, another setup issue. There's a common theme here where all the characters' setup just wasn't all there. Now, where we get them from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie, it's fair. It's really all you really need. But for a movie this detailed, I feel like maybe there is some setup, a bigger setup that probably ended up on the cutting room floor if it was actually made. The last thing I'm on the fence about when it comes to this movie is the musical aspect of it. Listen, if you watch my channel, you know that I am not a musical fan. Now, there are a few musicals that I do like. I love Sweeney Todd. Really do. I'm on the fence with it here because the musical aspect is not very prominent, and when it does come about, it's actually like a David Bowie ballad. I'm still just not a huge fan of it, but it did okay, so I'm on the fence with it.
Everything I've done for you. I move the stars for no one.
Now moving right along with what I don't like about this movie. I brought it up a few times, but I am going to say it. The sexual tone with Jareth towards Sarah. It's really fucking weird that that's in this movie. But the fact that people filmed this movie with this weird duality between Sarah and Jareth, and no one found it to be inappropriate, and kind of look at Jim Henson and go, bro, shouldn't we make them near the same age or something? Because this is kind of weird. I mean, you literally have David and his Bowie on display through the whole movie. Can't tell me they didn't see that. They saw that. They knew that was there. And if you want to brush that under the rug, then consider the very deliberate choice of them using a peach as the fruit to give to Sarah. As apples are considered the fruit of knowledge, peaches are considered the fruit of fertility. They put that in there on purpose. Again, in a movie that's so detailed, there's no way this wasn't deliberate. Again, I'm just baffled that this was not considered inappropriate back then. But I think moving forward in time, I think even people who do like this movie have now come out and said, yeah, it's kind of weird. It's kind of creepy. The last thing I really didn't like about this movie, and it really comes down to one scene, and it's the green screen scene. And there's this one musical number with this weird 3 little monster thing. The green screen is freaking terrible. It's so bad. And it sticks out like a sore thumb because everything else in this movie is so detailed and looks so good. In a world where we already had Superman and Star Wars, and Lucasfilm was a part of the production, why is the green screen so bad? There's no real excuse for it. It really sticks out. And I'm surprised that didn't get cut out of the movie because it just looks really bad, especially in a movie that otherwise looks incredible. Overall, I was very surprised with how much I liked this movie. Again, I thought I missed the nostalgic train on it, and I wasn't going to have the same love for this movie that other people do. But the surprise of this movie is that I did find some nostalgia towards it, and not because of the movie itself, but because the style that the movie is shot in. I am a huge fan of the never-ending story, and it really reminded me of that. And I know if I would have seen this movie as a kid, I would have absolutely loved it. It was shot beautifully. The story was great. It was really funny. It had stakes. It had consequences. It had really all the emotions that you want to feel. All the feels. On top of a really great performance from Jennifer Connelly and a pretty okay performance from David Bowie. He wasn't bad. He's a little stale sometimes. But as I mentioned before, there could have been some more connections, more setup between Jareth and Sarah when it comes into the real world. More setup for pretty much all the characters in general. And I could have done without the super creepy, sensual context between a 40-year-old Jareth grooming a 14-year-old Sarah. That is really weird. I don't know why it's in there. And moving forward, in my headcanon, that's not a thing. That's not what that is. But for all these reasons, I'm giving this movie a solid B.
That was wonderful.
Bravo!
I loved that.
Oh, it was great.
Well, it was pretty good.
There you have it, guys. There's my review for Labyrinth, a movie I'd never seen before. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. Also, be sure to check out some more of my videos. And as always, stay trigger happy, my friends. Peace.